Hey, Zach Winters here. So it's been a wild ride, but the authorities have finally caught the Long Island serial killer. So I'm sure you've been following the news. You probably already know Rex Harriman, a 59-year architect that split his time between Massapequa Park and Long Island and his office in Midtown Manhattan. For those not in the know, Midtown is where Madison Square Garden, the Empire State Building sit. Times Square would just be a few blocks north, and this is the main entrance point for Long Islanders, as Penn Station is right here. Rex was such a regular in the area, he can even be found on Google Street View talking to a woman. We'll include that picture right here. So there's a lot to say, but in this video in particular, I'd like to focus on the court documents that have been released and what evidence they have. Before we do, can we just take a moment to appreciate Rodney Harris, the new commissioner of the Suffolk County Police Department, and Ray Tierney, the new district attorney who will be prosecuting on the upcoming trial. It's really not hard to see why the grand jury would indict Rex on this case, strictly based on the information we have. Ray Tierney's predecessor discussed in a full-length interview prior to their arrest how the county spent hundreds of thousands of dollars building out their abilities to look at cell phone data and be able to cross-reference it with their data on the cameras, among other things. So the database that they use to cross-reference is reportedly the Lawman system. The Lawman system rolled out in 2012, and it's given law enforcement a searchable database of 15.6 million New York State vehicle registration files. It also updated the law system so law enforcement would be able to see a person's full lifetime driving records, including tickets, arrest, and whereas previous the system only had access to the most recent 4 years. Tim Sini described data that was so complex that even with the sophisticated cops of the NYPD, New York State troopers, the FBI, and their veteran detectives, they needed a system that's basically AI that could delve into it. The AI system they implemented was able to cross-reference, hundreds of thousands of pages of data and make connections that humans just wouldn't be able to do, even given decades. So at some point, they went from having thousands of names that could match up to only hundreds. All right, and it seems that Rex's real fatal flaw in regards to the cell data, at least, is that he carried both phones on him. All right, so he had his burner phone and his real phone, and they were both being able to talk to the same point. And the Ray Tierney, discussed how at no point could they ever eliminate one burner phone and his real phone. They always seem to move together in tangent. So all's multiple burner phones pinged at the same points, places in time with his real phone. Even the taunting phone calls to Miss Bartholomew's sister was able to be tracked down to towers that correlated with his New York City office and Long Island home. Now, the three young women he's been charged with in connection, Megan Waterman, Melissa Bartholomew, and Amber Costello, can be connected to Rex via his use of the burner phone and his primary phone. Ms. Waterman's phone even showed her travel from Hauppauge in Suffolk County back to Massapequa Park in Nassau County. Because of these type of connections, the investigators discussed an area of Massapequa Park they called the box. That they worked backwards on. All right, so the box included the suspect's home at 105 First Avenue in Massapequa Park, and the New York City box included his business located in Midtown Manhattan. Okay, so Rex also reportedly used his burner cell phone to sign into an AOL account, Springfield Man 9, which was created only to correspond with the women he was soliciting for sex. Rex had a large collection of firearms, and it's hypothesized that the Springfield is an omen back to the weapons maker. It's also interesting to note that New York has some of the strictest laws on the books to own a pistol, and as such, he was investigated to obtain that. Any of his handguns he would have legally owned would have been photographed, the serial numbers kept on record with the county, something all New York residents have to do to comply. He had 92 pistols on his permit, and he had over 300 long guns in total. Ray Tierney, after being elected, started a new task force in January of 2022. And by March 14th of 2022, a first-generation Chevrolet Avalanche that was registered to Rex came into play as an unnamed witness who had identified the vehicle to be driven by the killer. Now, the witness also described the driver of that vehicle to be a big man, brown hair, and described as an org. When I asked Bear Brodsky, one of the two men who were friends with Amber Costello, if he recognized Rex, he said he took the mugshot to jog his memory. The original photo of him all dressed up in a suit was not how he remembered him. The three of them evidently called him Frankenstein. Amber Costello and her two friends, Dave and Bear, had run a boyfriend ruse wherein Amber would accept money up front from her patrons, and at which point the Johns would be surprised by Dave and Bear. It's now been confirmed that Rex was caught up in this ruse. Rex would later text Amber that was not very nice and ask for a credit for the next time. We also did an interview with Bear Brodsky. If you haven't watched that, I'm going to link it here. Some on the internet have wondered why Amber would go back out with Rex after scamming him out of money. But it should be remembered, the three of them were young. They were addicted to hard drugs. And with maturity and sobriety, I'm sure Amber would have counted her lucky stars had she been given the chance to grow as a person, something this monster robbed her of. All right, so ultimately they weren't thinking straight, obviously. When someone offers a ton of money like that and you're addicted, it's going to be hard to turn down. You're not going to make rational choices. And as some of you may have asked questions about Bear, we do have plans to record a follow-up interview in the coming weeks, so that is coming as well. In the bail paperwork, they released a small fraction of Rex's Google searches, many of which I can't repeat here, nor would I really want to. But because this is a small fraction of the search terms, we can infer certain things. All right, Mr. Tierney, the prosecutor, would have had to choose which ones connected back to the case and which were irrelevant. So keep this in mind. This is speculation, but the ones that stick out the most, he Googled term Asian twink tied up porn among more explicit searches. Twink is a term that describes gay men with a slim build and youthful appearances. So why could this be important to the case? Well, one of the victims is known online as Asian Doe. It was an Asian male dressed in women's clothing. And keep in mind, he's only been charged with 3 of the numerous victims found at Gilgo Beach thus far, but this could indicate why they included that. The next one that stood out was 10-year-old black girl, which searched among more explicit terms of the CP variety. One of the victims, the original investigators has coined Peaches, was linked to a toddler that was found in the same area of Valerie Mack and Jessica Taylor. Now, the toddler was linked to Peaches via DNA and was around 2 years old at the age of her death. Peaches was one of the African-American or dark-skinned victims, one of the few in this cases. And in the last 12 months, there's been some major advances in the case of Peach as well. So they had found relatives in Alabama, and however, the relatives that were found were long deceased. So the question is he reliving these, victims' demise by Googling these, search terms, or is his research into the Long Island serial killer driving him to look up these other victims that maybe he's not connected to? Like I said, it's pure speculation, but I think it's revealing that they decided to include that on his bail app. The prosecutor also mentioned that between March 2022 and June of 2023, another burner email used by Rex searched over 200 times for terms related to the elusive Long Island serial killer. More troubling, he would look up family members of the victims, and as well as counter investigations on why the police couldn't find the killer. Here's a small sampling. Why could law enforcement not trace the calls made by the Long Island serial killer? Why hasn't the Long Island serial killer been caught? Cops launch Gilgo Beach Homicide Investigation Task Force. So the documents also note he looked up numerous podcasts and documentaries on the case. I have to wonder, did he watch and comment on any of ours? That's a chilling thought for sure. Now, the most damning of all, I've seen people online, some of you I even know, say they don't believe Rex is the real killer. I personally know it can be a really hard pill to swallow when you've been following the case for 10 years or more, and you may have someone you thought was the person. However, it's important we put our egos aside. Remember, they're real families, real lives, and this has been devastating to everyone involved. The investigators shown that there is real DNA that also connects Rex to the victims. All right, DNA is one of those things that just can't be tricked. It is what it is. All right, so there was a mix of male and female hair that was linked back to Rex and his wife. Because you have to explicitly say it these days, the wife and the kids are not connected and as such should be left alone. The focus and blame sits squarely on Rex and his shoulders. The investigators say the wife's hair probably transferred from a source that was not directly from her. So it could have been from the car, could have been from the home. Remember, we don't know exactly how everything happened, but it was verifiable that she was out of the country and out of the states on the dates that these girls went missing. All right, so the DNA samples were able to exclude 99.98% of the North American population. All right, so that's a very, very, very detailed, very small portion here. During the press conference held on Friday, July 14th, 2023, Mr. Tierney referenced their concern in his behavior and the need for them to move on him right away. Since all the girls he were charged with vanished in the summer months, one has to wonder, was he gearing up for another round? His wife verifiably on vacation in Iceland, among other places in previous case. Does this indicate maybe she was scheduled to leave again? Okay, so for right now, that's what we have. This is obviously not my day job, so I try to put it out as much as I can, as soon as I can, and I'll have another one, a little more detailed, coming out soon. Please, if you can, like the video, subscribe. I hate asking, but it does help. It gets us out there so that other people can view this. All right, thanks for watching, and see you soon.